20 common mistakes tourists often make visiting Washington, D.C. I'm Chris. This is Yellow Productions. I am joined by special guest Rob from Trip Hacks DC. Rob, thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. And so the first common mistake people make coming to Washington, D.C. is they stay too far away from all of the tourist attractions. When you come here, you want to stay in the city, stay in downtown. If you're staying further out, maybe Crystal City, maybe Arlington, Alexandria, Ballston is about as far west as I would go.
You know what I hate, Chris?
What do you hate?
Commuting.
I know, it's awful.
And that's what you're going to do if you stay way out there.
For sure. You talk to people and they spend an hour from their hotel getting into the city, and then they don't spend time enjoying it. All right, Rob, what other mistakes do people make coming to DC?
Well, number 2 is their trip is too short. You need at least a handful of days to do just the main attractions in Washington, D.C., let alone some of the lesser-known things or some of the hidden gems. And so it always pains me when people tell me that they're coming, but they're only going to be here for 2 days, or even worse, for only 1 day.
Oh, so for those of you who don't know Rob, in addition to being a cool YouTube channel host making videos about Washington, D.C., he's also a tour guide here in Washington, D.C. So Rob, how many days do you recommend people come to visit the city?
Okay, well, it depends on where you're coming from. If you live nearby, and you can drive here, or it's just a short flight, I would say a minimum of 3 days. Now, if you're coming from farther away, if you're coming all the way from the west coast of the US, or from Europe, or from even farther away, at least 5 days. Definitely not shorter than that. Otherwise, you're just going to tease yourself with all the things that you could have done, but didn't have enough time to do.
Yeah, I agree. Coming a long way, there's at least 5 days worth of stuff here. So the third common mistake visitors make coming to Washington, D.C. is they try to see all of the National Mall in 1 day. I hear it all the time. And whenever I talk to those people, they never seem to enjoy it. Rob, do you find people try to do that?
Yeah, and then they complain that their feet hurt because they've been out on their feet all day. I think the thing is that different things take different amount of time. So out here right now where we are on the monuments, if you do a monuments tour with me, do it all in about 3 hours. But you could go to a museum and you could be there for the whole day. So trying to do everything in a single day, can't do it. Which leads perfectly into mistake number 4, which is getting museum fatigue. Chris, you've been to these museums, right? They're pretty big.
They're pretty big, and they can be pretty tiring.
If you go to the museum, you're going to be doing a lot of walking, which is a physical activity, and you're going to be doing a lot of reading, which is a mental activity, and it's going to get tiring. Not to say that it's not good, or it's not fun, or it's not worth it, but it's tiring.
Common tourist mistake number 5 is visitors coming here, seeing the National Mall, and thinking they saw all of Washington, D.C. D.C.'s actually really big. Rob, how big is Washington, D.C., just to give people some scale?
Well, the city has a population of about 700,000, and the metro area about 6 million, which is bigger than the entire country of Ireland. Yeah. So it's quite a bit of people who live here. We have a lot of restaurants. We've got big city amenities. We've got pro sports teams. Anything you want to do, you can do. Common tourist mistake number 6 is wearing new or uncomfortable shoes.
Yeah, new shoes are the worst because you get blisters, your feet aren't used to them, so you want to bring some shoes that you've broken in. But speaking of comfortable shoes, Rob, you walk around here a lot. What do you like to wear on your feet?
I sure do. I wear Mizuno shoes, and I buy them from a running store. I actually go into the store, I try on all the shoes that they have on offer, and I pick the ones that are the most comfortable.
You go to a store, like with walls and a roof?
A real store,
yeah,
that's right. What do you like, Chris?
I really like Hoka One Ones. They're just the biggest, most comfy shoes I can find. Common tourist mistake number 7 is not planning where to eat when you're visiting the National Mall. I really find the National Mall kind of like a food desert. As a little bit of a foodie, my tummy is usually quite unsatisfied with the National Mall options. But Rob, what do you recommend?
My favorite places are north of the National Mall. So I like And Pizza, I like District Taco, I like DC Pokey, and those are just a few blocks north of the National Mall, downtown, but definitely better lunch options, better food options than what you'll find on the mall itself.
Yeah, thanks for that tip. One that is a little bit out of the way of the mall, but if you're going around Greater DC, one of my favorite places to eat is Moby Dick House of Kebab near DuPont Circle. Super good kebabs. So we lost the sun behind some clouds, so we turned around from the tidal basin to the FDR Memorial back here. But this leads us into mistake number 8. Rob, what's common tourist mistake number 8?
Do you want to eat at a fancy restaurant? Do you have a reservation? If you don't, then you're probably not going to eat there. I am going to eat at a Michelin-starred restaurant in a few months. I'm really looking forward to it. I've had that reservation on the books already. So get them in advance, because if you wait too long, you're not going to be eating at those places. Yeah,
because people coming to DC, they plan a long time ahead. People who live here plan a long time ahead. So it is definitely a reservations-needed city for the high-end spots. So speaking of reservations, mistake number 9 is not making reservations for the common tourist attractions. The Capitol Building, the White House, the Washington Monument all require reservations. And Rob, how do people get those reservations?
Well, if you're a good planner, you've done it online. At least a few weeks in advance, if not a month in advance. But if you're not a planner and you want to go to the top of the Washington Monument, you can turn up on the day of, but you better hope that by the time they get to your spot in line, there's still a ticket left. Common tourist mistake number 10 is not knowing which quadrant of the city you're in. Now, Chris, do you know where the White House is?
I do.
What's the address?
1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Well, if you turned up at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast, you'd be at somebody's apartment building. So you want to go to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest.
Yeah, and this is really non-intuitive for first-time visitors to DC, but literally every address has this NESW at the end. Those things are important, and the 4 quadrants of the city, they radiate out from the Capitol building.
Make sure you get those addresses right.
Common tourist mistake number 11 is getting caught in an afternoon rainstorm without an umbrella. Rob, do you have an umbrella?
365 days a year, I carry this umbrella.
Rainstorms are so prevalent here, and it won't seem like it at one part of the day. Even wind is pretty prevalent here too, but the rain is really gonna ruin your day.
Yeah, you don't want to get caught in a thunderstorm, and pretty much every day, no matter how small the percentage is on your weather app, it's always greater than 0.
Yeah, so Rob carries it every day. Anytime I come to DC, I always bring an umbrella.
Common tourist mistake number 12, no sun protection in the summer. Now, before I came out here and met Chris, I put sunscreen on, got my sunglasses, and even though I'm not wearing it right now because it would put a shade over my face, I got the hat. I wear this hat when I give tours. If you don't bring sun protection, it's going to be a pretty tough day.
In the summer in particular, the heat can be really hot. The sun can feel like it's right here, and it's all because of the humidity. It's really humid. When I'm here in the summer, I just start sweating, and it seems like it never stops.
So the reason there's humidity is because there's water in the air, and with water comes mosquitoes. So Chris, what do you think about that?
I think that common tourist mistake number 13 is not bringing mosquito repellent, particularly in the summer when there's a lot of mosquitoes about. And particularly when you're around the river and the water, don't make that mistake. I did today, and I'm, swatting a few here. So, one way perhaps to beat the mosquitoes is to get a rental car and drive around instead of walking around. Rob, what do you think about people who want to get a rental car coming to DC?
No, that's tourist mistake number 14 is getting a rental car at the airport and trying to drive around. Something some people don't know about me is that I don't really drive. I walk places, I ride Capital Bike Share, and I use Metro. And driving in Washington, D.C., it's just stressful. It's difficult, it's stressful, it's not pleasant, and rental car prices are high, especially post-COVID and all that stuff. And so skip the rental car at the airport, use your feet, use Metro. That's how I recommend getting around.
Yeah, I think the only reason why you might want to get a rental car is if you're doing some day trips, like out to George Washington's house or Thomas Jefferson's house. In that case, consider coming into the city, enjoying your time in the city without your rental car, and then putting your day trips at the end, picking up your rental car for that. You might even consider moving hotels in that case. Maybe move out of the city where the hotels are cheaper. Spend your time when you're in the city without your car.
Great tip. So Chris, you're not going to get the rental car. You're going to ride the Metro. Do you know what the proper Metro escalator etiquette is?
Well, that brings us to mistake number 15, which is standing on the left side of the escalator is a mistake.
Don't do it.
Yeah, the left side of the escalator is for walking. The right side of the escalator is for standing. If you don't remember when you ride the escalator, just look at what everybody else is doing and you'll see everybody standing on one side. Just stand on the same side. So that mistake of standing on which side of the escalator is Rob's biggest peeve. But don't let Rob's peeve deter you from riding the Metro. It's really a great way to get around the city. But Rob, what's our next mistake?
Well, mistake number 16 is too many day trips.
Yeah, and so Rob, earlier you told us people should spend 5 days in the city. When you say 5 days, does that include day trips or not?
Well, I think there is definitely 5 days worth of material here in Washington, D.C. So if you're going to be here for exactly 5 days, probably wouldn't do a day trip. If you're going to be here for, say, more than a week, yeah, you could do a day trip. But if you're, say, a huge Thomas Jefferson history buff, then go to Monticello. Don't deprive yourself of it just because you don't have a lot of days. But what I would say, Chris, is don't just go there for the sake of going there. Go there because you have a purpose for going.
So you've probably been hearing some airplane noise in the background because we're really close to Ronald Reagan National Airport. There's 2 other airports that have Washington in the name, which brings us to mistake number 17, which is thinking that Washington Dulles Airport or that Baltimore Washington Airport are close to Washington, D.C. They are not close. Drive times from those 2 airports, 45 minutes or more. So if you want the close-in airport, Ronald Reagan National Airport, DCA are the letters you want to type in.
Speaking of flying, this leads into mistake number 18. Chris, you own a drone, right?
I do, yeah.
You didn't bring it with you, did you?
No, I left it at home for this one.
Good, good, because Washington, D.C. is a no drone zone. And I know most people probably don't own a drone, but if you make videos for YouTube or you just like seeing things from the sky, you might have one. Don't bring it with you.
Yeah. The whole city? Like, what about the White House? Can I fly it over there?
The whole city off limits, and you can't even turn your drone on. If you have one of those DJI drones, which I think is the most popular brand, if you try to turn it on, it won't even turn on. I see people often out in the middle of the park, and they're frustrated and they're confused. They can't figure out why their drone won't turn on. That's the reason why.
Yeah, and if you do get yours to turn on somehow, the goon squad is probably going to be on you pretty quick.
Yeah, attach that GoPro to a kite.
Yeah, good. Mistake number 19 is going to Chinatown and expecting really good Chinese food. Look, Chinatown is actually a really neat neighborhood. It's got these cool arches, but it's not where you're going to find the good Chinese food. One of my favorite places for good Chinese food, it's out in Virginia. It's called the Peking Gourmet Inn. It is George Bush's favorite restaurant. Which George Bush? Both George Bushes. It's famous for their Peking duck. If you like Peking duck, check that out.
Now, Virginia might have the Chinese restaurant with the most famous people eating there, but if you want the largest concentration of Chinese restaurants altogether, that's in Maryland, specifically around Rockville, Maryland.
Yeah, I've had some pretty good dim sum up in Rockville. And that brings us to the final mistake number 20, which is coming to Washington, D.C. without watching Rob's awesome travel videos on D.C. on the Trip Hacks DC channel. Rob, tell people how they can find more of your cool videos.
Go ahead and click or tap right here, right now to watch more videos. I've been making videos for 5 years. I have over 200 Washington, D.C. travel videos, which I know is not nearly as many as you have on Yellow Productions, but hey, for just one city, that's kind of a lot, right?
Yeah, for sure. And so as usual, I won't say goodbye because Rob's going to see you over at Trip Hacks DC.